This is my supplementary attendance video for February 7th, the day that we talked about delivery. You began the class by proposing the question whether or not it should be illegal to post photoshopped images on Instagram. David said yes, it should be illegal. Joey said no, it should not be illegal. They both stated their reasons why, and afterwards, that was all set up so that afterwards we could start talking about delivery and how to speak to a group of people and what that looks like. So one of the main things that we talked about, we started with just like the basics of presenting, and we began by saying, knowing what you're presenting, knowing what you're talking about is huge. You don't want to be searching for words and looking around the room, looking up at the ceiling, not really knowing what you're saying, and people can tell when you don't know what you're saying. So really having your information down pat is very, very important when you're presenting. Breathing, of course, seems trivial, but it's something that we can all work on. Everyone has speaker's anxiety from one point or another. I don't know that I've met anyone who absolutely loves getting up in front of people and presenting and never gets anxious that people might think of them some certain way or they might do something to embarrass themselves. Everyone deals with that sort of thing. We talked about a few different ways to move through that speaker's anxiety, whether it be exercise, specific breathing exercises, accepting that you're just going to be nervous and afraid and using that to your advantage, using that energy to boost what you're saying, dressing comfortably. You don't want to be standing up there picking and prodding at your clothes trying to get comfortable. You want to be up there confident, know what you're talking about, breathing through, and acting confident in general. Even if you might not be the most confident person when you're speaking, fake it to make it sometimes actually works in this sort of situation. It's easy to put on a face for just a few minutes, and it really will help you even if you don't think it will in that exact moment. We also talked about using space in presenting. So I'm sure everyone's seen a presentation of someone who just stands in one spot and just kind of like sprinklers around the room, doesn't really move around, doesn't really show a lot of action, which can be hard to watch. It gets boring. It kind of draws your attention away from what they're saying because you start thinking, why aren't they moving? That's a little weird. You lose the attention of the crowd when you don't move. So we talked about the presenter's triangle, which I thought was great. That's not something I had heard before, about moving between different pieces of the presentation. Through transitions, you can help the audience to see when three different things are being said by being in three different positions. Although it seems trivial and seems that it may not work, it's a visual thing for the listeners, and I think it's something I'm definitely going to use in presentations going forward. Hand gestures, we watched those TED Talks about presenting in general, but the first one was specifically about hand gestures. The lady presenting said that the most watched TED Talks used around 460 hand gestures throughout the entire presentation, which I thought was a crazy number, but I guess, it make 15 minutes talking for 15 minutes, it makes sense. And, using hand gestures to keep the audience engaged, keeping your things lined up. You can coincide specific hand gestures with what you want to say to actually help you remember what you're presenting on, what specific points you want to hit. Eye contact is huge. You don't want to be staring at the wall or the ceiling. It kind of makes you seem like you're just talking. You're not presenting, you're just kind of speaking. And there's a difference. You want the audience to feel engaged. You want the audience to connect with you, and looking at somebody in the eyes and focusing on them as they focus on you really gives a connection throughout the presentation. We spoke a little bit about how different things look in different situations, specifically things like hand gestures, like I spoke about a minute ago. I believe it is Asia, which you said has it's more common to present with your hands sort of down by your waist rather than up at your midsection as we do in the US. Different things look different in different places. Everyone has their own way of presenting, and some situations might cause you to need to change up the way you're speaking a little bit, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Body language is huge. Body language can sway what people think about the presentation. If you're, sitting there kind of just hunched over and you're talking and looking at the room, seems like you don't really care what you're saying, or that maybe you don't know what you're talking about. And that's never something you want. You want people to feel as though you know what you're presenting on, you have a good understanding of everything that's happening, and you're able to hit these specific points and go through and look professional while you do it. It's half the job is looking professional. You can say the smartest thing in the world, but no one's going to respect the guy or girl who's, slouched and kind of doesn't really care. And then especially vocalics. We talked a lot about vocalics and how, using different pitches can make things sound different. You don't want to you have a happy pitch as you're talking about, something depressing, or you don't want to sound monotone through your whole speech, because then it sounds like you don't care. Timing is huge. Emphasis is huge. The way that you say things is very dependent on what you're talking about. If you slow down and you get quieter and you get to a point where you're going to say something impressionable. Of course, I didn't say anything impressionable there. I'm just giving a talk about what we talked about in class, but you can see how that might affect the audience. Draw them in. They want to hear what you're about to say because it looks like it's going to sound interesting. 9 times out of 10, you want it to be interesting. 10 times out of 10, you want it to be interesting. So timing and emphasis is really important. And we also talked about the rate. Throughout this whole presentation that I'm recording right now, I've been thinking about the rate at which I'm speaking. I'm trying to keep the time limit to a minimum because, it's supposed to be around 4 minutes, but I'm speaking very fast, and I realize that. It's just because I want to get all this information in. Rate is really important as you talk as well. So just overall, this class was about delivery, how to present, what makes a good presentation, how you can tell if someone's unprepared for a presentation, which is never a situation you want to be in. So I really enjoyed this class. It helped me learn a lot about presenting and gave me a lot of lessons that I'm definitely going to use in my presentations moving forward.